Hi, everyone. Surprise. Uh, I'm Jonah. I'm one of the organizers here at the Weather and Climate live stream. Those of you who've been watching our channel know that we put on events where we showcase some of the wonderful science being done by researchers in the weather and climate science community here in the US, the incredible things that your federal funding supports through your tax dollars, and we reach out to share what people are doing and to work together to try to keep our science funded, to keep our science from being cut, to stop closures, weather balloon cuts, and the various things that we've been experiencing here for the last few years. Today, I'm here. My name's Jonah. I'm a professor at Tufts University in the Department of Earth and Climate Sciences, and I'm here today with a friend who will be on soon to talk about a pretty big issue, something that we thought was worth having this kind of impromptu, surprise, last minute little stream. And that is these rules that the Office of Management and Budget have proposed that would completely change how federal funding works in the United States. It would completely change how research funds are distributed. And this will affect everyone here in the US and even throughout the world, because this would take a process that right now is pretty transparent. It's pretty informed by the expertise and the background of the scientists who help inform the selection of which research grants in the US get funded through the peer review process, through the work of the career scientists who work at the federal agencies that help administer these grants. There are people who they spend all their time trying to figure out what is the next area of research, what is the next area of their discipline that might be advancing, and help to then work in concert with scientists in those communities, researchers in those communities, to evaluate the best grants that might be being brought forward to advance those communities. All of that picture of how federal funding dispersal occurs in the United States, this might be completely changing. This idea that career scientists put out a call for grants and anyone can apply, this might give way to a situation where political appointees are explicitly canceling or censoring or removing grants that are seen as being not in alignment with the priorities of the presidential administration, of the president that they were appointed under. This can include even if there's a perception that the science can be used to help justify policies that the administration dislikes. And we've already seen this a bit with weather and climate science funding here in the US, this justification being used to try to go after the National Center for Atmospheric Research. But this goes way beyond, as you'll be seeing today. This affects how medicine and medical research is funded in the US. It affects even outside the sciences. So we have a chance to fight these new rules. And there's many more weirdnesses associated with these rules, that including being able to put out calls for grants that aren't public, that are done in secret. It seems like a great way to funnel money any which way a political appointee would like to take that money. These new rules are right now just proposals. They haven't been finalized. And part of that process is that we, the people, get a chance to comment on those rules. And you don't have to be, you can do this commenting anonymously. You don't actually even have to be a US citizen to comment on these rules. Anyone can comment on these rules. And like a good academic, I've left this to the last minute. We've all left this to the last minute. These comments have to be done by tonight, midnight, Eastern time, July 13th. But the good news is, if you write a comment, if you get your thoughts in on what needs, how these comments will affect you, this is very important. I've been reading through these comments, and a lot of them have a lot of great passion and a lot of great rhetorical arguments. but it needs to not just be, why are these not a good idea, or why did these get you so fired up? It needs to be, how are you affected? Because we're all affected by this. If we live in a society where the political administration, the presidential administration decides that a certain area of science is somehow against its policies, and that science funds the research that would help save you from a disease, that would help your community be safer. You can, it does not, you don't have to be so directly in the crosshairs of this. We're all affected. We all benefit from the system that we have, the science that's being done, the research that's being done. So being specific about how you are affected and citing the specific passages and specific numbers. So I have some examples that are scrolling here along the bottom of the screen. Examples of parts of these new rules. So this section 202.02 is a big one. Programs must align with administration priorities. There's more resources on all of the different ways in which these rules might be affecting your lives. You can read more in the links in the description, but also what we're going to be doing for the next hour or so is I have some comments that I think have been particularly effective that I'll be sharing, but then also to help set the mood for you to maybe write your own comments if you haven't already. I have my friend Solon. I'm just gonna bring him on for a second to say hello. This is
Hello?
my friend Solon, who's a pianist, and he's going to be playing some nice tunes to help you write some comments. And if you have any requests for maybe your favorite composers for the piano, or people whose music you particularly like, Solon, I think you said that you might be willing to take some requests. Is that right?
I'm happy to take them and I'll do my best to fulfill them.
Okay, that's wonderful. So we'll be hearing back from Solon in a second. Um, and I'm glad to see we do have a couple people out there. Hello, Vector Z in Panama City, Florida. Thanks so much for being here. I'm just going to read one comment first. I thought this is a really good example of maybe of how these rules are so cross-cutting and affecting our society. So I think this particular comment is from, let's see, from Melissa Morrison. So Melissa Morrison writes, I'm a Phoenix nurse practitioner who treats people in recovery for addiction to drugs and or alcohol. Nurse practitioners are trained to apply the best evidence to their practice. In a field, addiction that is especially susceptible to stigma, medical evidence is the backbone of effective treatment, relatively free of social, political, and cultural bias. I oppose the proposed regulation, particularly sections 200.205 and 203.300. Native Americans and African Americans disproportionately die of overdoses, for example. Because it will subject future research to biases, and medical research and subsequent treatment options will be compromised. Ultimately, patients will suffer. Additionally, research traditionally takes a long time, spanning multiple political administrations. Section 203.340, this is a section that allows grants to be terminated at any point in time. 200.340 and 200.202 threaten the completion of potentially life-changing research by subjecting it to midstream cancellation. This is wasteful and, more importantly, will deprive Americans of the fruits of this research, regardless of political affiliation. And again, your comments can provide a basis for future legal action. This is a very broad and wide-ranging set of rules that are being proposed. There's a lot in here that really seems pretty aggressive in terms of what it's trying to do. Your comments can help people in the future look back and say, maybe this went too far. So maybe this gives you a chance to think about these rules. I'm going to bring on Solon, and he's going to play us some music.
Great. Hey, everyone. So good to be gathering today in support of these important and scary issues. So Jonah and I were thinking that since we are gathering, it's always nice at a gathering to add some music to bring everyone together. So I'm going to be playing just a few pieces to kind of underscore your writing process as you're putting your comments together on these issues. So I'll start today with a couple of short sonatas by the composer Domenico Scarlatti. I'll play two sonatas and then I'll hand it back to Jonah, I think, to share some more comments to inspire you.
Wow, that was really wonderful. Let's give it up for Solon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Hopefully that
much.
got some creative juices going. I hope.
What did you just play for us?
So I just played two sonatas by the Italian composer Domenico Scarlatti, who wrote hundreds and hundreds of these little gems that he passed down to us from hundreds of years ago. So I always, for little pieces like these that manage to capture like one little emotion, it makes me feel connected to the past and I guess in turn to the future. So it helps to place us in history.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful sentiment. It's very tied to why we're here today. You know, the when I look back at the history of this field of weather and climate science, that is the same history as federal funding here in the U.S. So I'm I think we when you look back at the earliest weather prediction, the first weather prediction ever made uh, using a computer. The first sort of modern weather prediction was made here in the United States at Aberdeen Proving Ground using federal funding. This is something that has been a part of the story of how we've gotten to where we are as a field. And that is the very thing that is under threat today. And the work that we do today, writing these comments, can help us to protect this for the future, for the generations to come. So let's thank Solon again. He's gonna be right back in a moment. Um, but let's read another one of these amazing comments that, you know, many thousands of comments have been written. I think the total number at this point is reaching up into the hundreds of thousands, and that's very exciting. But I've noticed that a lot of these comments do not do the work of specifically talking about how the writer is personally affected and how the specific sections of the rules affect the person writing. And that is very important for getting the message out, and for very important not just for getting the message out, but for making this legally actionable so that if there's a court challenge, people can look at the specific section and say, well, this affects people in this way, and we know that the regulation shouldn't do that. This is a lot of common sense stuff that we know hurts our ability as a society to learn about the world, to take care of each other, to do all the things that your representatives intended to do with your tax dollars. So let's read another one of these uh, wonderful messages. Um, this is from Nora S. And she writes, the proposed changes affect me both as a librarian and as a both as a librarian at a large research university and as a stage 4 breast cancer patient. So my specific concerns, she writes, Section 200.340, as proposed, allows agencies to terminate any active discretionary grant if it no longer aligns with the national interest as they exist at the time of the termination. And I can say in our little corner of weather and climate science, this is how we hire people, how we train our graduate students, is we have these grants that we expect to last over the course of years so that people can be hired and know that their job isn't going to go away all of a sudden. And the notion that that money could just be taken, already the turmoil we've seen in the last year or so has led some PIs I know to just engage in some incredible gymnastics of logistics to protect their students. This is and protect their employees. This would make this so challenging that it could discourage people from wanting to take these sorts of positions. But I was only thinking that in terms of our employees. This affects things much more strongly if you're in medicine. So this person writes, this is so broad as to be meaningless and effectively converts any multi-year discretionary grant into an at-will arrangement. As a U.S. citizen, I was horrified by the government's recent cancellation of many in-process grants. Funding for years and canceling before results are obtained is a waste of money. As a citizen, I demand the government be more responsible with our funds. And if there are people who are receiving treatment, I'll just add this in as part of one of these grants, because a lot of these are for medical research, that means their treatment disappears. And there are some other letters that mention this as a result. The proposed changes to 200.300 prohibit DEI and gender ideology. Will cuts be made to breast cancer research based on the fact that it disproportionately affects women? Will a proposal with good science be rejected because a politician doesn't approve of the gender terminology used? There's a lot of very specific language around gender and sex in this document. I encourage you to go and read more about this. Uh, this would open up many grants, many institutions to being targeted potentially by the OMB. Section 200.220 prohibits foreign collaboration. As a patient, I can tell you cancer is not a US phenomenon, it is worldwide. And of course, the same with weather and climate. Sometimes the technology from other countries surpasses what we have available. Collaboration is not a loss, but a gain for patients everywhere. Access to the literature is crucial for high quality research. It also ensures that we're not duplicating work that was already funded. The proposed changes to section 200.454 will limit access to literature, hampering our researchers. Library budgets across the country have been cut. Libraries can't pick up these additional journals, and this is a librarian writing, of course. This is a matter of national security. Other countries are approaching or surpassing our technical superiority. Now is not the time to limit resources. And then this last thing might sound a little technical, but is an example of the sort of maybe negligence, you might say, or difficulty that this sort of rules would create in our fields. I'm confused about the conflicts between the new proposed 200.461, which states that publication costs are unallowable, and the previous rule, the 2022 OSTP open access mandate, which states that publication is required. If publication is required, but the publication costs are unallowable, where should those costs be coming from? Clarification is needed before this change can be implemented. People have talked about this. This creates a catch-22 where you both have to make your research public, but you're not provided with the resources to do so. So I strongly urge OMB to reconsider the proposed changes. The changes will negatively affect US research institutions and the lives of patients who depend on government-funded research for our continued survival, including, it sounds like, this very researcher or any of us down the line. So this is, again, an issue that goes beyond just what we focus on in this channel. This is an all of us issue. And speaking of universal things, let's hear a little bit more music. Bring back Solon.
Okay, I'm
Solon, would
back.
you like to? You
My
back?
hands are back. Can you see my hands? I gotta switch it a little. Okay.
Can folks see Solon's hands all right?
Here they are.
Okay.
This
Okay.
is my first live stream piano experience, so I'm learning as I go. But I'm going to play
It's
two more
really
short pieces that are just things that I was thinking of earlier today. They're two beautiful pieces separated by, I don't know, 150 years or so. The first one is a short piece by Fanny Hensel, an amazing pianist and composer from the 19th century. It's a short piece called O Dream of Youth, O Golden Star. And then I'm going to follow that up with a short piece by Aphex Twin called April 14th, which I've never tried playing before, but it was in my head today, so we're just going to see how it goes.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Solon.
My
The
pleasure.
great to hear those two pieces from so far apart in time. But what did you say the name of the piece by Fanny Hensel was?
That was called "O Dream of Youth, O Golden Star," and then we heard Avril 14th by Aphex Twin, apparently transcribed by Michael Jordan, I guess a man of many talents.
Absolutely. Well, I think that album, excuse me, I think that song is from his album Drugs, and
That's
sounds
right.
a little bit like, yeah, sounds a little bit like drugs, which is a thing that medical research is very important for helping us find
Uh huh.
things that
A
will,
master of
yeah.
segues. Go with it.
Thank you
Good.
so much. Absolutely. Let's look at this. We have let's thank Solon again for this moment and give him another little break here. Um, we have a letter here from a comment, I should say, from a researcher, professor at at Brandeis University, who does medical research. And I thought this letter really gets at some of the issues that are specifically facing people in the medical field. I think these comments have made quite a lot of ripples. So this is from Gina Turgiano. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Gina writes, this proposal will undermine rather than serve the goals of enhancing transparency, accountability, and oversight of scientific research. By transferring core funding decisions from qualified scientific experts to political appointees, it will make federally funded science less merit based, less rigorous, less stable, and less responsive to the public interest. I urge OMB to withdraw or substantially revise the following provisions: 200.205, 200.300, 200.340, 204.454, and 200.461. These provisions entail such substantive changes to the scientific research enterprise that a 45-day comment period is clearly inadequate, which is what we were given for these rules. Executive Order 12,866 mandates at least 60 days and up to 180 days for complex rule changes. I therefore urge you to extend the comment period so that the repercussions of these proposals can be fully considered. I'm a professor of biology and neuroscience at Brandeis University, where I run a federally funded lab to study brain functions and disorders. I'm a National Academy of Sciences member. My lab has been continuously funded by the National Institute of Health for 30 years. I've published over 110 peer-reviewed articles. This person seems like they know their stuff. I've trained over 40 PhD students and postdocs who have entered the US scientific workforce, and they've served on NIH study sections, on advisory panels of major scientific institutions across the country. I understand how federal research funding has historically worked, the strengths and weaknesses of the current system, and the evolving needs of US science. So then she talks about each of these sections in particular. So let's talk about 205, pre-issue issuance review by political appointees with peer review demoted to advisory. This proposal requires senior political appointees to review every discretionary award, ensure it advances the administration's policy priorities, and disallows routinely deferring to peer reviewers, thus reducing expert review to an advisory role. This undermines the purpose of merit-based review. Peer reviewers assess methodological rigor and scientific significance, judgments that require technical expertise and cannot be made by political appointees. The success of the post-war U.S. research rests on funding decisions guided by independent expert evaluation rather than political preferences. A political review forbidden from deferring to that judgment replaces this merit-based system with a system that is vulnerable to crony interests and political influence. The contrast between US and Soviet science illustrates the cost of such ideological control over research. And for those who don't know about this particular point, US versus Soviet science, look up Lysenkoism, I think is the uh, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's Lysenko ism. This is a phenomenon that happened where the Soviet government decreed that genetics was wrong, and the theories of this scientist Lysenko were correct, and this was applied to agriculture and agricultural research, and people believed things about being able to graft wheat onto other wheat and make it do all sorts of things that it just couldn't do. So this isn't idle, and these things. If you think that these don't affect your field, then guess what? This spreads. You know, after Lysenkoism, people started making Einstein's theory of relativity seem like it was against the state. So there's a lot of danger in going down this road. We have Section 300, content-based award conditions. Broadly defined and vague prohibitions create uncertainty that can discourage legitimate research and prompt self-censorship. The resulting chilling effect is likely reduce scientific innovation, the opposite of the stated goals of these reforms. Mid-award termination, this is 340 for shifting priorities. The proposal would expand authority to terminate active awards without a finding of noncompliance for virtually any political reason. The resulting uncertainty will push investigators and institutions away from ambitious long-term projects towards safer, shorter ones, and will undermine the training of the U.S. scientific workforce by making grant-funded positions increasingly precarious. Most critically, it will drive talented people away from scientific careers by making salary and research support unreliable. This would be a catastrophic change with lasting negative consequences. Even if we were able to get another set of rules down the line, these rules could hurt us quite a bit. Section 461, publication costs, APCs, and open access fees would be presumptively unallowable. This provision is in direct conflict with the existing federal public access policy, thus creating a catch-22 in which open access is mandated but unattainable for many researchers. It prevents using funds for compliance, but existing policy states that other standard ways of providing open access to the work, such as posting to preprint servers, is also unallowable. So this approach must be rethought. There may be legitimate means of limiting federal expenditures on open access, but there must be a clear path that allows all federally funded scientists to comply when publishing their work. Finally, we have these last few. 205, global standard science as an undefined test. This is a phrase that's used a lot in these rules. It's unclear what this means. Grants and institutions must meet this undefined standard. This vagueness opens the door for arbitrary and capricious enforcement. And then 202, program goals aligned to administration priorities. And finally, this is one I find particularly concerning. Competitions exempted from public posting. A broad national interest exception could move entire competitions out of public view, defeating transparency. And again, this is from Gina Turgiano, PhD, professor at Brandeis. And so that was a long letter. Let's shift back towards some music. So bring Solon back on. And yeah, welcome back, Solon.
Thank you. Okay, I have two more short pieces to share with everyone. The first one is by Sergei Prokofiev. It's from a collection of short pieces that he wrote called Vision Fugitive. So I'm thinking, let's not let science funding in the US be a fleeting vision. And I'll follow that up with a short piece by Claude Debussy called Reverie.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Solon. I was so beautiful. I almost didn't. I was just so enraptured. I forgot to go and get the letter, but I went and just grabbed it. But I was just so wrapped. That was really wonderful. Can you say again what those two pieces were that you just shared with us?
Sure. So I just played Reverie by Claude Debussy, and before that, it was one of Sergei Prokofiev's Vision Fugitive.
Cool. And you said that what did that translate to again?
I
Something
think something like Fleeting Visions.
fleeting visions.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, let's break for another letter. This is going to be a pretty short one. So I'll give someone another break. This is a letter. I just thought it would be nice to um, focus. This is an issue that wasn't coming up in the other comments that people were submitting, but again, this is an example of these comments don't have to be big as long as they're specific and they're about something that affects you. Um, here again, we have another case with an academic, but you don't have to be an academic. You can just be someone whose life has benefit or would benefit from some of the research that's happening here. And this is an anonymous one, so you can submit your comments anonymously. It does not have to be tied to your name. So this is section 432, which says that you can't um, use research funding for a conference or for a conference for your students unless you had uh, explicitly specified it in your grant. And this makes things much harder because often grants do last for a number of years and people might not know about every grant, every conference that they might want to bring their students to years down the line. And conferences are so critical for all of our fields for exchanging knowledge, but also for building the community that then sort of motivates us and pushes us to uh, create the work that we create and also helps us to get more informed by from our peers, then builds collaborations and people can come together and you get work that is more than the sum of its parts. That's awesome. We have someone is working on their comment right now. So from Zentoro. So that's um, let's read this comment. I presented my federally funded research several times throughout my PhD, including at conferences I didn't know about until 3 years in. At one of these conferences, I shared my work with an organizer of a citizen science group, and she invited me to give an online talk to the citizen scientists. This provision would have prevented this conference interaction and removed an opportunity for the citizen scientists to engage on a deeper level with their project. So maybe this seems like a smaller thing than the other examples we've been reading, but this is important too. And all of these examples, this is the stuff that adds up to make a wonderful research community. This is what we're trying to protect. And with that, let me bring Solon back on.
Okay, yeah, so
Welcome back,
happy to
Solon.
see Zenturo working on that comment. So let's have some more music to underscore that. So I'm thinking next I will play something by Mozart, a movement from a piano sonata that he wrote shortly after his mother died. So I think it's nice to think about how um, at, in times of grief or where things seem very desperate, that there are beautiful things that can come out of that. So I'm glad that we're all able to gather here when times seem a little desperate, but there should be some light ahead. So this is a movement by Mozart.
So beautiful, so wonderful to have that, and I you can hear both the grief, but also the beauty and the joy of the
Hmm.
music, um,
Absolutely. All mixed together.
all mixed together. And that's I think that is really appropriate for this moment, as you're saying. We this is a hard moment, but coming together, being together here to hear this beautiful music, working on these comments. Again, hundreds of thousands of comments coming in, but more being written right now. A lot of academics certainly like to leave things in the last minute. I know that we all do. Just 4 more hours to go until the deadline. Um, I I have a last letter here um, that I'm going to read just to close things out from the letters. Um, uh, that is from Patty Buchanan. And I wanted to read this because so many of the things I read so far are about people who are academics or they're professors or they're faculty members. And I just wanted to read something to show you that anyone can write one of these letters. This affects all of us, can write one of these comments. Patty Buchanan writes, I am a taxpayer writing as a member of the public who cares about federally funded medical research. I do not have a scientific background, but I understand that this rule would give political appointees the power to override scientists in deciding which research gets funded. I have a family member with cancer who has benefited from treatments developed through NIH-funded research. The idea that future research on diseases like this could be denied funding not because scientists found it unworthy, but because of a political official decided it did not advance the president's priorities is alarming to me. Science should be funded based on evidence, not politics. I strongly urge OMB to withdraw the pre-issuance political review provisions in Section 205 and not finalize this rule. And so this is, I think this is a really great example. This is an issue that affects all of us. And just as a final thing here, I'd like to say, something that Solon just mentioned in playing was that there can be hope in a dark moment. And I think that uh, this moment is helping us realize the preciousness of what we have. And maybe so many of us stepping forward and saying that we care about this, that we need this, uh, maybe that can motivate us to protect these things more strongly so that it can't just be brushed away with a rule. So hopefully that's something that can come from this. But it's been really wonderful to write and to think about these things with the beautiful music that Solon that you've played. So I just wanted to thank you one more time for coming here and sharing that with us.
Well,
And
I'm glad I could join. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to write comments. It's inspiring to open up that site and see just how many comments have already been written, and I'm glad that we're just adding onto that pile to show the weight of the situation.
wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this impromptu visit. We'll hopefully see you again soon and hopefully under better circumstances. But from both of us, be well and get those comments in if you haven't already.